I haven't hit that milestone at 5 years old to ask her if she's had her hands down somebody's pants. I'm pretty sure at this point that would involve the police and me with my gun. So, no, we haven't hit that crossroad yet, Gene, but I'll be sure to think of you when I do.
I don't know, with all the unsolicited nudes you're sending out, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash, no one's going to tell me who I can score with, Schlafly.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. And at the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, you can subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. Finally, one other way you can support the podcast is by visiting us at shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and end each week with a Shappy Hour cocktail party on Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Even if you don't like Twitch, even if you don't want to watch us live, go to shatthemovies.com/Twitch and subscribe using your Amazon Prime subscription, and that will give us a little bit of money every month. It doesn't cost you a thing. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Gene, before I get to the movie this week, I just want to take a moment to wish everybody a happy 2021. And again, I want to thank everybody for spending this past year and the past 4 years with us. This podcast has become a time capsule of my life. I can't believe it's been a year ago since we started talking about coronavirus, and I can remember the entire trip with all my co-hosts and the audience. So I want to thank everybody for joining us in this new year, and it should be a good one. We have some great movies coming up, and that includes tonight's, which was commissioned by Scott H., and he wanted us to review the 1983 romantic comedy, Valley Girl.
Well, and Scott writes in and he says, Dear Shat Crew, thanks so much for accepting my commission, A Valley Girl. I found your podcast while binge watching Game of Thrones. I was a little lost and started listening to the GOT podcast to help me understand things. I was hooked, and it brought me to Shat the Movies. I'm a UPS driver, so y'all's podcast helps me to get through my hectic day. I lived in Midwest Ohio during my teenager years, and I watched movies in my best friend's basement. He was the only one of my friends that had cable and HBO. He would record movies from late night HBO, and we would watch them later. One of those movies was 1983's Valley Girl. This movie made me move to California and see the sights and sounds of LA. Also, this movie introduced me to the genre of alternative music. Artists like the Sparks, the Plimsolls, and Modern English are all in my catalog still today because of this movie. I rewatched it last month with my wife, and it took us back to the 80s with scenes from the mall and all the fashion. I hope you enjoy it and are excited to see how it holds up. Y'all have a happy new year, and looking forward to more great podcasts. Scott H. and Friendswood, Texas, which, by the way, you guys, is only about 30 minutes from me. Scott's super close.
Well, Valley Girl is a 1983 romantic comedy directed by Martha Coolidge and starring Nicolas Cage, Deborah Foreman, Michelle Mernick, Elizabeth Daly, Cameron Dye, and Michael Bowen. The plot is based loosely on Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. The film originally was conceived as a teen exploitation film to capitalize on the Valley Girl fad inspired by the Frank and Moon Unit Zappa song Valley Girl. Zappa unsuccessfully sued to stop production of the film, claiming it infringed on his trademark. In the opening weekend, Valley Girl grossed $1.9 million at number 4, and its final domestic gross reached $17.3 million. Now, Big D, I was just 3 years old when this movie came out. Ash wasn't even born yet. what are your memories of Valley Girl?
My only memory of this movie is my parents one summer for a weekend rented like a cottage in Cape Cod. And I remember this poster on the wall. And I just kind of stood there looking at it. I was 9 at the time. I thought they looked kind of cool. Didn't know what the movie was about. And that has lasted all the way until this week. I had never seen this movie. I had no interest in watching it. I would have gone my entire life happily in a bliss, having never seen it. And it would have been a terrible travesty because it ended up being something I enjoyed. And I want to thank my favorite UPS driver for that commission.
I was waiting the whole movie for them to be in these outfits. I was really let down. I was like, when is Nicolas Cage going to put on the tie and vest? I don't remember the first time I saw this movie, but most of the truly special people in my life, like the people that I've connected with heart to heart, people I've dated, best friends, they all love this movie and have recommended it to me. So I was glad that we had an opportunity to cover it for Shat.
Yeah, and you're correct, Jean. This came out 3 months before I was born. But like you, tons of my friends growing up, like the people, I was friends with like this older group of people that graduated a couple years before me. And they were kind of part of like my education of pop culture and like the things that I should, quote unquote, be watching and doing. And this was a movie that they introduced me to. Watched it lots of times in high school. Hadn't seen it in forever though. So I kind of went into this with a bit of fresh eyes and was surprised at how different it was viewing it today than when I was, a kid.
Well, here's a question for you both, because Scott H. had 2 movies that he gave us the options. He said this one, Valley Girl, or The Last American Virgin. I've not seen either. Did we get the better of the movies?
So I'd seen The Last American Virgin, and it was like on regular play in my house as a kid. I really, really liked that movie. But I think Valley Girl is more, I would say, consequential, because if you go and like look at reviews of Valley Girl on different websites, people will hail this as the 80s movie. A lot of them. They're saying this is the 80s teen movie. And I think that culturally speaking, it's the more significant of the two, but it's definitely the one that I was least familiar with, which I also appreciate because I love to see a movie that I, haven't really watched before.
Agreed.
All right. Without further ado, Big D, let's get to it.
Ow, gag me. How could you?
For sure. Gertie. Besides, it's totally gnarly birth control.
I can't stand it. Okay, so he's awesome.
Valley Girl.
She's out there somewhere.
This is the story of a boy from Hollywood who never dreamed the girl he'd want most was down here.
Hello.
Hello. Who invited you?
Oh, wow, you mean you have to be invited? Well, that explains it.
What?
Well, everyone is dressed weird. See, if I had been invited, I would have known this was a costume party.
Right.
It's the story of a girl from the Valley who never dreamed she'd ever be seen with a boy from over here.
Like, I'm not getting out of this car.
All right, but when they attack the car, save the radio. So when can I see you again?
I'm here with you now.
I know.
This is the story of Randy and Julie, the way they come together, and the people who try to pull them apart.
Like, don't you think they have parties over there? Oh, where? At the zoo?
This geek that she's with could scar her for life.
God. Life?
If you think she's confused, you should see her father.
I'm together now. Be right there.
Julie's cool. Randy's hot. She's from the Valley. He's not. Valley Girl.
Julie Richman is a Valley girl who seems to have it all, but she is having second thoughts about her relationship with the arrogant and selfish Valley dude, Tommy. At the end of a shopping trip with her friends, Lauren, Stacy, and Susie, Julie runs into Tommy and breaks up with him. Later that day at the beach, Julie trades shy glances with a young man in the distance. So as we're watching this opening montage, I'm like, wait, I think we've seen this before. This reminds me a lot of the mall montage of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And then I was like, at the beach scene, I was like, man, this feels a lot like Grease. Well, Grease came out in 1978. Fast Times came out in 1982. And I'm like, Valley Girl, you're here in 83. Don't you have anything new to offer us? And don't get me wrong, like it's okay to riff on something we've seen before, but it's kind of like my policy with cover bands. If you're going to cover a song, you got to make it more interesting or better. And I feel like Valley Girl fails at both right off the bat.
I don't disagree. I felt so much of the Grease influences. And like you said, the Fast Times at Ridgemont High influences with them all. But I think at the same time, you talked just a second ago about how consequential this movie is. And like so many movies that came after it, they repeat this plot. And so I think the thing here that was a bit off-putting for me was watching it as I was thinking of movies like Say Anything, movies like Pretty in Pink, that have this same type of plot, like somebody from the quote-unquote wrong side of the tracks and then the other person falls in love with them. And I think that gets repeated over and over again. And things that come after this did this so much better that it was hard for it to not feel like completely derivative from the get-go.
Hold on here. Okay, so you two are going in different directions. You're saying, oh, we see this later on done much better. And Gene's like, I want something new, break new. It's a high school romance. What do you want him to fucking go to the moon? What do you want him to
That'd be
go
cool.
to France?
Sure.
It is a high school love story. It's supposed to be funny. There's nothing new you could do with this. But I think what it does, there's an earnestness to it that I think a lot of the other movies don't have.
But I couldn't help but notice that there are so many scenes in this movie, though, where all the girls are like looking at the boys like, oh, he's hot. Oh, look at him. And I was like, do women really do this? So I asked 4 women in my life. I did my research, guys. I asked a woman at 68,
your mom,
a woman at 46,
sister,
a woman at 32,
your girlfriend,
and a woman at 21.
Somebody from Krav.
No, my niece. If girls in high school sit around and check out boys like the girls in Valley Girl, every single one of them were like, no. And even as a guy, I have never done this. I don't know about you, Big D. I never stand around with the boys. I'm like, hey, check her out. Because frankly, I'm too competitive and I don't want the other dudes to know who I'm checking out. Ash, can I get a ruling on this?
I mean, I feel like lots of groups of guys have done this in my life. But as far as girls, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we definitely check guys out, but not like this, like not like sitting in like the food court, like catcalling at guys. I mean, no, that doesn't happen. I think it's more that girls that I've been friends with, like we picked out like one guy that you decide like that's the guy I'm going to, get with. And you may talk about how cute he is, but not like this. I mean, this is a bit ridiculous. And I just want to respond to something you said, Big D, a second ago about how what do we want it to be something new? All those movies we mentioned did something new with teen romance. I mean, Fast Times, totally new. Pretty in Pink had lots of new things. Heather's totally new, right? So it's possible to not just be earnest and a really super boring start to a fucking teen film.
This is a trailblazer. Give it respect for what it was.
Yeah, but Fast Times was a year before this.
Right.
No, I don't know. I got to check the release dates.
It's 1982.
I don't know about that. It may have been released in Europe. Who knows?
Ash, I got to ask you though, when you're talking with the girls about the boys,
with the girls,
is it shot calling? Like I'm fucking that one, everyone back off, or is it more like you're looking for their opinions as well to like get consensus on whether the guy's hot?
No, I mean, so first of all, let me go ahead and just get some. I don't have many girlfriends, so I don't know if I am like a good, authority on this because most of my friends are guys. But I will say that it's more like shot calling than it is because I mean, I've never cared if anybody thought a dude was hot that I thought was hot, kind of thing.
But is it more PG like? It's like, oh, look at his butt in those jeans. Or it's like, oh, I can't wait to just fuck him. Oh,
look at that cock in that jean. No, I mean, like, we don't say shit
balls.
like that. No.
I'm going to suck that dick. No?
Yeah, that's what I say in the food court of every mall. Yeah, they just point out guys and that's a dick I'm going to suck tonight. No. No. It's more just like, but it's also not, oh my God, he's so cute. Like, it's also not that. So I guess it's more just, he's hot. But speaking of hot people, or more specifically, not hot people, let's talk about the cast of this movie. Because I think that categorically, this is one of the most unattractive casts that we have come across. And I know, let the hate mail flow in, because I got all this hate mail about Molly Ringwald. I'm sorry, she isn't attractive, as all of you people think she is, but she's beautiful compared to the people in this film.
No, and as a fat guy, I'm going to be able to do some fat shaming here. Everybody in the 80s was so fucking skinny. We commented, I think, on Caddyshack, Spies Like Us. Everyone, there's no fat kid in school. There is not a single fat kid on the street. Everybody was skinny, and as a result, they're more attractive. I'm sorry. Yes, the women look good, but the guys all look like the young Roy Munson in Kingpin before he loses his hand. The women, they all look fine to me. You don't agree?
Gene looks so horrified.
Why? Why?
There's no fixing mouths is the thing.
Yeah.
What?
Thank you. Thank you.
Look, Big D, there were several times in this movie that I had to remind myself that Julie was one of the kids and not someone's mom. She looked like someone's mom throughout the film. I was like, okay, so that's the mom. Nope. That's the lead girl in this movie.
But it's not because of her mouth. It's because of the way she's dressed. I go back to Trading Places where I said I don't get how Dan Aykroyd's character could get a boner with the way that that girl he was dating dressed. And it's the same here. I mean, y'all, who goes to a party dressed the way that Julie and Stacy do? They're wearing lace. They're wearing pearls. They're wearing those giant ass earrings. And I know it was the 80s, but they look like corporate secretaries. I mean, they're supposed to be 17, but they look like they're 35. Now, I will say Nic Cage, clearly his outfits are amazing. And I know it's my own bias because I was an alternative kid myself. I didn't dress like everybody else. I was on the prayer list at my parents' church standing that I would change the way that I dressed because my mom hated the way I dressed so much. But I think personally that those types of clothes, they just hold up better. I still look really badass in a lot of my high school pictures because I dress so differently. And I just think it holds up here for Nic Cage as well.
I just want to take a moment as well to point out to the listening audience that we don't do this with like normal people on the street or in our lives. We're not sitting there like, did you see what that bitch was wearing? It was horrendous. Did you see her mouth? It was terrible. No, this is a movie. We watched it as a movie and in movies like Valley Girl, people are supposed to be attractive so that when we're watching the movie, we go, ooh, look at them. Like, guys, I'm getting old. I've been really into Turner Classic Movies lately. And I look at those people, I go, they look fucking phenomenal. Everyone looks fucking Judy Garland. Holy shit. Gorgeous. Phenomenal. That's Hollywood. That's movies. And so when we're watching a movie where it's not trying to be gritty, where it's not trying to be like, these are rough people. It's not fucking Cold Mountain or whatever, Bone Tomahawk, whatever the fuck. Like, then, yes. It should be, Tomahawk. I don't know. The one with Jennifer.
Winter's Bone and Cold Mountain.
Thank you.
But not Bone Tomahawk.
Bone Tomahawk was pretty gritty too.
Yes.
But anyway, what I'm saying is that just to clarify, we are three nice people. We don't do this in normal life. This is because it's a movie. Them bitches look horrendous.
So is my fat shaming okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank God. Okay, so Ashley, you're commenting about what kind of party would you wear those earrings and that like pantsuit. This is a party that has sushi.
With peanut butter?
I immediately was like, does this happen? Is the Valley a place where this is accepted? Is this something normal? What should I know before going, Gene?
So I think there's a bit of hyperbole going on here, right? Like people don't actually dress like this. People didn't actually serve, sushi. But you got to remember, I mean, it was the parent serving the sushi, so who knows? But I started thinking about this after watching Valley Girl of like, what's the Valley actually like? And so for other points of reference, we should note that Shat is no stranger to the Valley. So Pulp Fiction happens a lot in the Valley. Boogie Nights, which we just did, is in the San Fernando Valley. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I mean, it's that whole like mall, galleria sort of culture. So we've seen it a lot, but as the years go on, as we shift from like the 80s to the 90s, the view of the Valley changes, right? So in the 80s, it was like considered like Hollywood was gritty and the Valley was sort of that suburban idyllic lifestyle. And then when you move forward to masterpieces like Clueless, you start to see that those Beverly Hills people are looking down their noses at people in the Valley. And Pulp Fiction sort of shows that the Valley is not all like, 4-bedroom houses with happy families. Well, at a party, Julie locks eyes with Randy, a Hollywood punk who has crashed the party with his friend, Fred. She discovers Randy was the young man at the beach. Tommy tries to sleep with Lauren, fails, and ejects Randy and Fred from the party. But Randy sneaks back into the house and hides in the shower. He convinces Julie to leave the party with him, and Julie brings a reluctant Stacy for the ride with Randy and Fred. Julie and Randy rapidly grow closer as Stacy continually rebuffs Fred's advances. Julie ignores Stacy's plight and the fact she never wanted to be there.
So we've already said that other movies have done this better, and I think that in this part of the film, it clicked for me about why it works better in other films, which is that in other films, there's likable characters. And the problem here is that these characters, it's not so much that they're detestable as much as it is they're just bland. And I think that's the issue. You know, Patrick Dempsey in Can't Buy Me Love is such a likable character. He's an incredibly likable actor. So you root for him. And I mentioned Pretty in Pink before. While of course Ducky is incredibly, likable in that movie, you've also got a likable villain. I mean, James Spader, you can't touch him. One, he's fucking beautiful in that movie. And two, even though he's an asshole, he dresses flawlessly and he's got charm and charisma. Here you've got Stacy and Julie and Brad and Fred, which we'll talk about in a second. And you've got Nic Cage's character. And they just all, it's not so much that they suck as much as it's just kind of like they're completely forgettable after this movie.
I don't know if I totally agree with that, because you're saying that you need a villain to be likable. Think about what we had with poor Jake from 16 Candles. If I go back and I think about Fast Times at Ridgemont High, other than Judge Reinhold and Spicoli being funny, I don't know that any of them are particularly likable. So I think what they're doing here is it's a more gritty, down-to-earth, normal person, and there's no way you can tell me that Fred and Randy's friendship doesn't seem genuine, and that Fred particularly, he's a cool dude.
Yeah, Fred is the closest to a charming character in this movie, and for me, it was when he was hitting on Stacy. Like, in the synopsis, we talked about how Stacy was rebuffing his advances. I think she was sort of coming along there, but the way Fred introduced himself, I'm Fred, I like tacos and 71 Cabernet. Like, he's hilarious. He's chasing Stacy around the car, calling her my little pickle.
Yes.
Like, I would be charmed. My pants would come right off. It's just, I think it really highlighted, though, how little personality Nic Cage brought to the character of Randy. He basically just sits there and blinks a lot. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but Ash, you were talking about likable characters or even like interesting characters. Shit, I feel bad about the way I rated like 10 Things I Hate About You after watching this movie. I feel bad about ever shitting on Sean Penn. Sean Penn would make an amazing Randy. And Ash, you mentioned before, Molly Ringwald would make a better Julie. I'd have any of them in this movie over the cast that we actually got.
Yeah, I'm convinced that Nic Cage's acting technique is the droopy dog. All he does, he looks like he's had some, like maybe a stroke. His eyes kind of droop. He doesn't. I understand he's a big or was a big Hollywood star. Now he'll do anything, but he just looks like he's not all there. But Fred, on the other hand, you're right. He's fantastic. The first line he says is when they're waiting in line at the bathroom. He says, "Do you think girls should pet on the first date?" I almost fell out of my chair. When I was young and I had my first girlfriend over the house, we went upstairs into my room. We got disheveled. I don't even think we were doing anything really bad. I remember coming downstairs, she left, and my parents sat me down for the talk. And my father actually said, what were you doing up there? What was there heavy petting? I almost fell out of my chair. I wanted to die. And this line here just brought me back to that moment.
So you guys are both parents. Is heavy petting, is that over the pants hand job or like
I think
jerking
so,
you
yes.
off?
Yeah, I think it's heavy petting.
You don't even know you're a daddy. How are you going to ask your daughter
I'm
if she's
sorry.
been heavy petting if you don't even know what it is?
He's going to put her on birth control like a responsible parent and just pray for the best. That's what he's going to do.
I haven't hit that milestone at 5 years old to ask her if she's had her hands down somebody's pants. I'm pretty sure at this point that would involve the police and me with my gun. So, no, we haven't hit that crossroad yet, Gene, but I'll be sure to think of you when I do.
I don't know, with all the unsolicited nudes you're sending out, who knows?
I don't know. You talked that was nostalgic for you. For me, the makeout scene in the car was totally nostalgic. I think that car makeouts were a really fun part of being a teenager. And sometimes I miss those, nostalgic days. I think that they were some of your best kisses that you have, your first kisses. And I thought it was done really well here. And I have hated a shit ton on Nic Cage and the way that he looks. And as you so aptly put, his droopy dog aesthetic that he has. But I'll tell you, like, the dude looks like a fucking amazing kisser. Like, those were some great kisses in that car. And that was nice.
Yeah, but that fur t-shirt, it's on full display here. He's got the button down open. That chest is thick. It's repulsive. It's disgusting. Yuck. But I do have a problem. I have had a difficult time my entire life because of my height. I've never been able to have sex in a tub. And I've only had really like a little penetrative sex in a car because I could not find one that fits.
I'm just imagining Big D in the back seat and the chick is like in the front seat with her head out the window. like okay, here we go. How do you not have room in a tub? A tub doesn't have a top.
No, it's uncomfortable. If I sit, my legs are up way on the side of the wall.
Seated in the tub.
Seated in the tub. Yeah, if you're standing
Well,
in
how
there.
else would he have sex in the tub?
Like standing and then she's bent over.
Oh, like shower sex. No, he means like in a tub sex.
In a tub. Like I couldn't do the Pretty Woman bubble bath and champagne and canoodle in the tub. I couldn't do that. I couldn't have sex in a car. It sounds nice. But I'd need to do like the police academy where Hightower rips out the front seat. That's the only way I'm having sex in a car.
Yeah, I mean, sex in tubs and cars are not comfortable for anyone, whether you're tall or not. But I think it's terrible that you're insulting Nic Cage's chest hair. I think that we have to normalize body hair. Like, there's nothing wrong with Nic Cage having chest hair. I thought it was kind of hot. It was groomed.
I think that was that's the problem. It's not that he has chest hair. It's that it was like over groomed. It was a shape. Yeah. There was a shape going on there.
like when you get waxed.
Yes.
Yeah, no, but I've complained so many of these teenage montages that they use to get from point A to point B in the plot so we can progress through the relationship without having to see every step of it. I found myself just utterly entranced with this. I could not believe, maybe it was because, I've been getting a little more sleep lately. I'm in a better mood. Maybe that was it. But the whole dating montage that, they're kissing and they're holding hands. They go to see a movie. I think it's Romeo and Juliet. They're on the beach. They're kissing again. I really liked it. Modern English is playing in the background. I don't know if the music played into it, my sleep habits, but I really enjoyed this montage.
I think if this movie got anything right, it was the depiction of a romance that was like fairly normal. And Nic Cage, he doesn't say a lot in this movie. As you said, Big D, he's droopy dogging his way through the entire film. But it was proof that like being a kind of quiet guy with simple lines, it's much more romantic than I was at 18. Like I had an overactive brain at 18. And in this movie, Julie asks Randy, where are we going to go? He's like, I don't care. Guys, that's the right answer. I don't care. Because I remember being asked if I believed in love. I had a girlfriend when I was a teenager. She's like, do you believe in love? Dude, all you got to do is say yes. And instead I was like, well, I mean, sure, there's love, but like one person that's right for you. I mean, in the 6 billion people in the world, mathematically, it seems kind of, dude, just shut up. It's romance. It's not science. Let it fucking go. Be cool.
Men are so fucking stupid sometimes. I mean, this. I feel like this happens all the time. And the biggest fight, literally the biggest fight Tom and I got into when we were dating, somebody had said that it was like we were meant to be together. And so I said later how, wasn't it so nice? They thought we were meant to be. I feel like we're meant to be. He's like, well, I don't really believe in soulmates. And he went into this whole Buddhist existential argument about how it's impossible to know if you're truly meant to be with someone. But hey, I'm really glad we're together now. I was furious with him. Y'all, say you're in love, say that you're meant to be, whether you believe it or not, because otherwise it just makes girls angry and not want to have sex with you. And I love that about teen movies is they get that. It's like this innocent love. The guys always say the right thing and there's something charming about it.
Did you just advocate for us to lie to our girlfriends?
It's not lying. No, it's not lying.
Okay, so I'm a Gunner. I'm an Arsenal fan. And one of the things that we say, Arsenal FC, we're by far the greatest team the world has ever seen. Like, objectively speaking, we are not. We're in fucking 14th place in the EPL. I know that. But that's not, it's about belief. It's about belief in the greatness.
It's like Santa. You tell Emma there's a Santa. Technically, you're lying to her, but that's better than just being like, hey, there's no magic in the world. Grow up because life fucking sucks. Like, you don't do that.
Is it okay if he says, oh, do I look beautiful in this dress? And he just goes,
No, see, that's different for me, right? Like, I don't want somebody to lie to me about the way I look because then I'm basing my personal appearance on that. So I think that's complicated. Most women, yes, they want you to lie to them. But I think it gets very, very complicated there. But it's about, like, I mean, how much does it's white lies, right? Like, how much does it hurt? If you do love your girlfriend and she's like, hey, are we soulmates? How much does it hurt for you to say, yeah?
Okay, I can buy that. But I think one thing we can without a doubt agree on. It is way more fun to party on the other side of the tracks. There's no doubt. And I don't know if it's not money necessarily, but usually when you're partying more in the dirtier parts of town with regular people, it's always better than if you were up at somebody's house with a bunch of people pretending to be who they are. And even Randy says it. He says, this is the real world. We don't pressure wash it like it's a television show.
Yeah, my cousins who live in like North Scottsdale, kind of near where Roger used to live, more affluent part of town. This is what they do. I'm not joking. This is a Saturday. They get up, they will go to like brunch somewhere. Then they'll go to the salon and get like blowouts and get their nails done, crap like that. Then they'll go shopping for an outfit. Then they'll go home. They'll have some sort of food delivered to their house. They'll eat that. And then they'll get dressed up and they'll hang out in the lobby of the W Hotel. And then they will get like an Uber Black back home. And that's their whole day. And I'm like, the fuck? You don't want to go to a show? You don't want to go to a club? You don't want to go to a soccer match? You just go to and it's every weekend. How do you live like that? It sounds horrible.
No, when I went out to Scottsdale for the first time, you took me out at like 4:30, it seemed, in the morning to this hole-in-the-wall fucking bar in a strip mall. And you're like, they have the best burritos in town. So I'm sitting in there in this bar. It's like 4 a.m. Now, it's not like we went at midnight and stayed over. The bar was opened at 4 and it was packed with people eating burritos and watching Arsenal football. And it is probably one of my best memories of Scottsdale.
Oh, thanks, man.
I feel so left out.
I will take you to crappy bars when you come. Ash, once we get vaccinated, we have so many crappy bars to take each other to. It's going to be a wonderful.
And Scottsdale, apparently.
Well, Big D, we talked about the authenticity of the bad side of town. I kind of want to talk about the inauthenticity of this movie's script. Wayne Crawford and Andrew Lane, who co-wrote and produced this movie, they were in their 30s when they wrote this movie. And I feel like the kids in Valley Girl, they talk the way a parent imagines a teen would talk. And this would be like if you asked me and Big D to write a movie. And I was like, okay, I'm going to write a movie about my nephew's life. And so I'm just going to be like, okay, they say things like bet and no cap and sus and finsta. And I just sprinkle those into this, and I sprinkle those into the script to make it seem more authentic. Like it doesn't work. It sounds fake.
Oh, okay, so sus, I know. Sus is suspect because it's that alien game where you got to figure out which one of them is the alien in disguise.
Among Us, yeah.
Among Us, yes. Sorry. What the hell is no cap?
It means I'm no lie.
Cap. Yeah,
like, no lie.
Yeah.
But where's it come from? Like no cap?
Like, hey, this movie sucks. Or? No cap.
Yeah,
like,
but what does no cap mean? Sus is suspect.
Capping means lying, like in hip hop lingo. Like, and so no cap is like no lie.
When you forgot on God. That's the other thing. On God.
Oh, I don't like for fencing.
Like a video game thing?
No, like no, on God. God.
Oh,
that's
what
everybody
a video game
hears.
Term
Not
or
on,
something?
not on guard.
On guard.
On guard.
What's it mean?
What's on God? Like I promise.
Like I'm not lying. Like no. Like on God. I'm gonna take you to the best bar in New Orleans.
I'm embarrassed to say this. The other day when Stan, I was like, let me Google what Stan is, and then I knew what Stan was, and I just forgotten about it. Yeah. Getting old sucks.
Memory is the first thing to go, Big D.
It's already going. It's going.
This is literally the oldest we have ever sounded on this podcast. If we had anyone listening 25 and under, they have turned us off and they have unsubscribed at this point in the show. No cap.
No, Big D's absolutely right, though.
No cap. No cap.
No, but yeah, our audience is like, these kids are crazy. Well, a subplot involves Susie and her stepmother, Beth, vying for the attention of a boy named Skip. One day, Skip enters Susie's house and finds a woman in the shower in Beth's bedroom. Another woman arrives home and goes upstairs. The bedroom door opens, Beth enters, and only then is it shown Susie was in the shower and in bed with Skip. Then Skip and Susie go to the prom together.
Okay, so I know I'm going to condone statutory rape basically here because I'm going to assume that Skip was under 18. Do we think that, or could he be a senior?
I think he was under 18.
Okay, let's just say he's 17. Beth is feeling him out to get him to either he has to. What do you say it is? You have to like clearly. You have to state. You have to. What is
consent?
Yeah, she's trying to get him to clearly.
Did you just have trouble identifying the word consent?
And that's the cold open.
No. No, I was thinking more that he implicitly had to state it. Like I have
consent.
Yes, it's called consent.
Okay.
I consent.
I'm thinking more about like Chappelle, where he's on there and he's making him sign the contract. Fine. So she is wanting to get a really clear consent from him on that. This is what his intents are. She's asking, what do you want to do? Is there something you want to tell me? Life only gives you opportunities at specific times. And yes, Skip knows what's going on, but the fact that he didn't just make that one step, I think he learned a lesson that he'll take with him the rest of his life.
I think Skip's just not a jerk. He knows that he wants to fuck Susie. He's not going to fuck her mom.
What did he think? Susie was home in an afternoon to deliver the groceries? He knew she wasn't home.
Yeah, but he genuinely likes Susie.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think he thought Susie was the mom. I thought it was just it was like a switch.
No.
Well, I mean, listen, easy mistake because I must be old. I couldn't tell the difference between the adults and the kids in this movie. Like everybody in this movie looked the same age to me.
True.
Julie, like I said, she looks like Randy's mom. I just don't remember teenagers looking like this when I was a kid. And again, this weird thing happens in your 30s, definitely in your 40s, where I look at anybody younger than 30 and I cannot tell the difference. Like I can't tell the difference between an 18-year-old and a 24-year-old and a 28-year-old. They all just look like children.
So I feel like, I don't know about you guys when you were teenagers, but I feel like most friendship groups has a Beth. They have that parent that's the quote unquote cool parent, the one that's willing to like turn a blind eye, that buys you the alcohol, that makes sure that you have a space to have sex with your boyfriend. And we certainly had one of those. I won't say her name because a lot of our friends from high school listen to this podcast, but she would book multiple hotel rooms across the border in Mississippi on the beach. And like we would go and spend the whole weekend out there and we would just get wasted and party like we were in college. And I remember my parents were so naive. Like they thought she was really, really responsible. And in adulthood, I've kind of let them know all of the things that this parent did. And my parents were like, what? Like, that's horrible. And thank God for her in high school. But now as a parent, I'm like, what the fuck was she thinking?
Well, I thought it was interesting that 80s movies that we've seen so far, the parents are always like out of touch and super boring and super conservative. I mean, it's always dad on the couch with his newspaper and his glasses and mom in like some prim dress in the kitchen with, orange juice and toast. And okay, we never did drugs or anything like that. And when we're watching Valley Girl, I thought, wait a second, they make a really good point here is that parents of teens in the 80s were teens in the 60s. So more of them should have been like hippies or mods or beatniks. Why haven't we seen more cool parents in 80s movies?
It's because the 80s became so conservative. I mean, that's why it's done so well. It's done the best, I think, in my humble opinion, in Heathers, where they talk about how conservative the parents became in the 80s. And you get the parent that kind of wants to be cool, but the Reagan era made everybody conservative. That's why we got parental advisory warnings, like fear mongering began, and parents just bought into it. And I agree with what you're saying, Big D. My life would have been a lot easier growing up if I had been able to go to my mother and ask her questions about sex and about life. And I made a joke earlier that you're just going to put Emma on birth control, but like that's a fight Tom and I get into all the time. And it's like, I'm realistic. I'm like, okay, I know what I did in high school by the age of 15. And I would like for my children to make different choices because I feel like in some ways things affected me negatively. But I also realize that if I'm not there to help them, like if I'm not like her parents here, that they're going to be as lost. And that's how you get, teen pregnancy and you get chlamydia, and all those shitty things. So,
yeah.
Well, Julie's friends pressure her to get back together with Tommy, and Julie's father tells her she should follow her heart. Despite all this, Julie reconciles with Tommy and later dumps Randy. A heartbroken Randy gets drunk, mates out with his ex-girlfriend, and nearly gets into a fight with a gang before Fred saves him. Fred says he has a plan that will reunite Randy with Julie as well as get revenge against Tommy.
I got to say, I'm not a big fan of Julie. How could she choose Tommy over Randy? Tommy is not half the man Randy is. Yes, he's a little quirky. He's a little rough around the edges. But when they're sitting in that booth and he's like, "Can I have your hamburger?" And he's stuffing the burger in his mouth and he's eating the French fries. And she looks at him with this dead eyes. She knows she has turned her back on love.
If Valley Girl has a leg up on any other 80s movie, though, it's for kind of this authenticity of like how shit actually goes down, because this shit happens all the time. This shit happened to me. I mean, maybe I'm a little bitter about it, right? But all the time where I was like, the goth kid who had a lot of feelings and wrote poems about these girls, and then they would just go off with some douchebag because pressure from their friends, because maybe I wasn't that great. I don't know. But I'd much rather they did it this way, because in every movie we've seen, what always happens? It's like they're falling in love with that guy and then like he's sabotaged in some way. Or like, the scene that we were missing from this is where she goes back to the Hollywood bar and his ex-girlfriend's drunk and hanging on him. And she's like, oh, he's back with her. And he's we didn't have that. And that's cool because that's how life really goes.
Well, no, the scene we missed is him coming in dressed like Tommy, right? Because that's what happens in all the other ones, right? Where like he comes in and he's like, "I'm too cool now," and he becomes more popular than her, and that's the conflict. But
yeah, like he's a cool rider, right? The cool rider trope.
Hey, he is sexy in that movie.
Boom.
He is sexy in that movie. But I will say, I agree with Eugene. I think that it's totally authentic. And being a girl that did this to guys a lot growing up, I totally related to it, because it's just something that because love is super intimidating. All those emotions are really big when you find a guy that's emotionally mature. And I think the problem here is, Gene, like you have like a really high EQ, right? Like most guys don't have high emotional intelligences until they're much older, and that's just it just feels strange when you're a teenager. But one thing that is not authentic is, Gene, you asked at the beginning if we sit around and check out guys. One thing we definitely don't do is do choreographs, synchronized dances in our underwear during slumber parties like there is in this movie. And we talked about the influence of Grease. Complete ripoff moment here, where they're all sitting there. I was waiting for one of them to break out in like Sandra D, because it's exactly like that scene in that movie.
No. Why are you doing this? You're telling me that you don't play around topless in the locker room like Porky's?
No.
You don't rat tail each other? No pillow fights during sleepovers?
What does rat tail mean?
It's where you take the towel and you spin it around and you psh, 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 hit each other in the butt.
I have never done. I don't even think I could physically do that. No.
Fun fact, that's actually a fetish with the king bee.
Really?
He says he cannot resist after if he sees a woman around him with no clothes on, he has to whip her with a towel.
Wow.
Rat tailing, I guess.
Well, so next thing you're going to tell me, Ashley, is that you don't have pillow fights during sleepovers.
Only if we're topless.
Oh, yes. Some of my little childhood boy wet dreams can live on.
Early in the podcast, I mentioned how much I liked Fred. The one thing Fred really sucks at is planning. He's like, yeah, I got this plan for you, Randy. We're gonna get it together. You got to fight for her. And basically, it just involves Randy basically stalking Julie. Like, I think we're supposed to be amused by his smoothness, how he keeps popping up everywhere in this montage, but it's just being a creep. And he also must be really amazing at job interviews, because he's like, you go to the movies, there he is. You go in to get a burger, there he is. Randy's fucking everywhere, and he won't let up.
I don't know. I think it's like, you're talking about fetishes. Like, I think like for me, like dudes that are super angsty smoking is something that I still seriously go for. And so I think when he's standing out there, in front of the movie theater and he's smoking a cigarette with his 3D glasses, I thought that was cute. I could buy that. The only one that I didn't like is sleeping outside her window in the sleeping bag. Like, that's where you draw the line, where it gets a little weird.
No, I just think we have to feel bad for Randy and Fred, because they're not as woke as Gene and they have a lower EQ. So they don't know how to internalize and what it really means to do, quote, romantic shit. To them, he's trying to save their love. He's trying to bring them back together. And this isn't stalking Gene. This is actually hard work. How do you know that he doesn't have all these jobs? You think they just give him the uniform? He's out there with a strong work ethic. We complimented Judge Reinhold in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Here, he's working to win the girl back. Maybe he's trying to save up to buy that motorcycle and be a cool rider. Don't judge.
Well, looking back on all of our romances growing up, I kind of played that outsider role in high school. And I think because of that, I've always hated these movies where the cool dude falls for the boring chick. Like, Hollywood looks rad. Randy looks like he's got a good group of friends. The bar is cool. His ex-girlfriend, Samantha, She's hot as hell. This nightclub is way more fun than the prom. Fred's a great friend. I just don't understand why Randy's even holding on to this. Like, why are you going after some suburban kid who looks like a mong, has shitty teeth, and wears pearls all the time?
So let me ask you a question. Do you like the movie Say Anything?
Yes.
Because this is exactly what happens to Lloyd.
Well, Lloyd is a high school graduate, and the girl in Say Anything, she's like going on to college, and she's like super bright. Like there's something about her that's at least impressive. We have no indication. We don't know what Julie studies. We don't know what she does. Does she have any interest? Does she play any sports? Does she like doing anything?
Well, yeah, she likes making out with Nic Cage. That's the problem with that montage that, you got all excited about a second ago, Big D.
Great.
Is because in the montage, instead of telling us anything about these characters other than the fact that they're horny, the montage only has them making out. And that's the issue. This movie has no character development at all.
I think love is a fairly simple thing when you're in high school. It's
God.
Nicolas Cage's hairy chest. It's her not wearing a bra. That's enough. Boom.
Well, Randy and Fred arrive at the prom and sneak backstage. Julie and Tommy are escorted backstage, waiting to be introduced as king and queen of the prom. Randy and Tommy begin to brawl, and when the prom king and queen are announced, the curtain pulls back to reveal Randy beating up Tommy. Randy knocks Tommy out, then escorts a thrilled Julie from the stage through the crowd. Tommy recovers and storms through the crowd toward Randy and Julie, who start a food fight and escape. The happy couple ride into the night.
So clearly I have a lot of issues with this movie, but one thing that I will never have an issue with is the music in this movie. It holds up absolutely beautifully. You've got Melt With You, which you already mentioned, Big D. You've got A Million Miles Away. The list goes on and on and on. And apparently this was a super tight budget for this film, but they spent in that super tight budget $250,000 to go to the music rights. And I do think it's worth like every penny that they spent, because the most enjoyable part of this film is still the soundtrack.
And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here. Maybe something's happened to me since Boogie Nights. This is another movie that does the music right. We're in the bar and we're hearing the band in the background. It's the ambiance. We're at the prom. We have the band. It gives it this whole vibe that's more genuine than just overlaying tracks like Forrest Gump and trying to get us to feel nostalgic. Here, I felt like I was in the car with my mother listening to popular radio, and it was great.
And that band that's playing at the prom, that's Josie Cotton. When she played the first song, I was like, holy shit, they're not going to do Johnny, Are You Queer? If they do that, I'm going to die. And they started doing it. I'm like, okay, something fun's happening here. They got Johnny, Are You Queer? There's a fight going on. Maybe this is going to be the big moment that everybody talks about with Valley Girl. And then they start this food fight. And like, even the shittiest 80s movies had fun food fights, because food fights are inherently fun. It's a bunch of kids throwing food at each other. This is the least fun food fight I've ever seen. It was like half-assed. All the kids seemed like low energy. I don't know if the craft services didn't show up, because it seemed like there were like a punch bowl and like 3 sandwiches that they were throwing. Like they couldn't find 40 people with any energy at all. And everyone just seemed so sad.
No, see, because I don't think this is actually a food fight. I had originally thought it was a liability to throw any kind of hard food or food with weight. So it looked like they were throwing like shredded lettuce. It really wasn't going far. There was some guacamole thrown. But now Ashley gave the answer. It's the budget. They probably couldn't afford a good craft service with, let's just say, what would be on there? Meatballs, sandwiches, hot dogs, things like that. So they just said, hey, let's reload the lettuce. Everybody throw it again. More lettuce. Throw it again.
They couldn't afford a hot dog?
I don't know. You said it was a tight budget.
I think they could have afforded a hot dog. But I will say,
one hot dog? Oh, here it comes.
Some Vienna sausages,
I just want Big D to cater my prom. Meatballs and hot dogs.
And finger sandwiches.
Romantic.
Well, you talked about low energy. I felt nothing when they were reunited. Did anybody get total, reminiscing of The Graduate when Dustin Hoffman's sitting on the bus and they completely don't know what to do and they regret it because they're not meant to be together? That's what the end of this film. And I was like, oh, well, maybe it's, maybe it's supposed to be ironic. And I researched it and it's not. And like, I want realism from a lot of movies, but my teen films that are supposed to make me feel good, I don't necessarily need realism from. And I'm sorry, I mentioned Say Anything. When Lloyd holds that boombox over his head, like, you feel the pain, you feel the angst, you feel how much he loves this girl, and you feel what you feel when you're a teenager, which is that like you would die to have somebody feel that way about you. And here, you know, you've got the swelling cords of melt with you, they rise up, and like you're supposed to feel that, and you felt, or at least I felt nothing. The only thing I felt was like, oh, well, I guess it's over now.
My thing is this: if every single one of a relationship is a boombox over your head, then none of them are boom boxes over the head. This is what a regular high school breakup and getting back together is really like. They ride off they steal the limo, and they're going to go off, and they're just going to have sex in the Valley Sheraton. That's it. That's what it would be. They're not going to go drive off into the mountains and start a family and have this romantically life. You know, I don't remember what happens to Say Anything, but I don't know that they're going to be together. Fucking in the Sheraton is the end of this movie, and it feels right.
So let me get this straight, Big D. Your theory is that they had an on-stage fight, then they went through the crowd,
Yep.
They started a food fight, they stole the limo, and they used the existing reservation that Tommy made to go get a hotel room, and then they fucked. But at some point, they decided, let's make this part of it real. They're going to be really subdued.
Okay.
In the
when you
limo.
put it that way, it sounds a little ridiculous. Yes, I think that Tommy probably would have gone and checked on his reservation. They might have beaten Randy to death. That could be later in the movie. We just didn't see that.
It's just a totally different film. Like, or it could have done its job and made me feel all, you know, wiggly in my tummy because I feel excited for them.
I thought that was Tom's job.
Well, not when I watch a movie.
It's more like in the lungs.
Yeah. That's what
Well, now is the time of the podcast where we give our Shat score. The wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is a pristine Nic Cage chest, waxed exactly the right way with perfect angles on the beach. And a 5 wipe movie is a lettuce, low-budget food fight at the prom at Valley High. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your score for Valley Girl?
I think I'm going to shock Scott H because I shocked myself, and I think a lot of the audience. I'm going to give this 2 wipes. I think the core of the film is universal. It's about struggling to fit in with your friends and to find that first spark of love and to keep it and to nurture it. I think Valley Girl is not as good as Clueless. It is not up to that level. But without this movie, Clueless probably does not exist. And I think every generation gets the Nicolas Cage they deserved. We've gotten the back end of it, the horse's rear end, and maybe the best Cage was at the beginning. But for me, better than average, a pleasant surprise, and it found me surprisingly nostalgic. This is a 2 wipe film.
Those 2 wipes from Big D. Ash, we go to you.
Clueless would have existed because of a better film the year prior to this called Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Like, Clueless was not influenced by this at all. And I'm sorry, I just think there's no plot here. I think there's even less character development. I think that this is an 80s movie that I'm sorry to say was really forgettable on rewatch. Like, I won't remember this film. I didn't think it was charming. I didn't think it was fun. And I just think it's worse than average. Give me Pretty in Pink. Please, somebody commission it. Give me Can't Buy Me Love. Give me Say Anything. Any of those films any day over this one. So I enjoyed it about as much as I enjoyed Trading Places. So I'm giving it the same score. 4 wipes.
Wow.
So before I deliver my verdict, I want to say that listeners like Carmelita Valdez-McCoy are going to hate me after this score, and that's okay. But what I encourage you to do is channel that rage into a positive place. Call us at 914-719-SHAT or email us and let us know what you think of our scores for Valley Girl. I know this movie means a lot to a lot of people. I really should have identified with this movie more. I spent high school and college being that goth kid who didn't fit in at mainstream parties, who couldn't date mainstream girls, but like occasionally fooled around with them until they were too embarrassed to acknowledge that it was me. The soundtrack, Ash, as you mentioned, had songs that I love, like Angst in My Pants and A Million Miles Away and Love My Way and Melt With You. And we even got Jefe from Three Amigos playing that lowrider cholo who came out and yelled at Randy. I was like clapping my hands for joy. But overall, Valley Girl felt like a half-hearted attempt to be a half dozen other better 80s movies. And honestly, this is one of those rare reviews that made me feel guilty about other scores I gave. Like I look back at what I gave Trading Places and 10 Things I Hate About You. And those are like reviews I feel guilty about giving, because that's where I'm rating this one. Valley Girl for me is 4.5 wipes. It's a disaster. So 4.5 wipes from me, 4 wipes from Ash, and 2 wipes from Big D. Averages out to 3.5 wipes for Valley Girl.
So exciting news. We are closing in on film 200. Woo-hoo. That will be in 2 weeks. So this is film number 198. And with a score of 3.5 wipes, that now ties this in the 156 spot with A Nightmare on Elm Street, Kindergarten Cop, and Repo Man.
This really is the Repo Man of romantic comedies.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So I guess this is like my Grease 2, right?
No, Grease 2 is a fantastic film, and you're just wrong about that one.
It's just so mean.
Well, before Scott asks for a refund, Big D, let's move on to listener email.
So, Gene, occasionally we get in some emails that just have shocking allegations. There was the legendary fart accusation against Ashley, which she was later vindicated for. Mm-hmm. We now have another one here, Gene, that somebody has taken out the old sniper scope. They're getting up on the roof with Leon, and they've taken aim at you, buddy. So Jennifer C. wrote in, and she said, I like the podcast, but hate that some hosts don't research anything before it goes on air. Joseph A. Banks traces its origins to the end of the 19th century, where Lithuanian immigrants Charles Banks opened a small tailor shop in Baltimore, Maryland. In 1898, his grandson Joseph A., or Joss is short for Joseph, Big D was correct. That was number 1. Shots fired. Number 2, get down, Gene. You Can Leave Your Hat On is a Joe Cocker song, which was also played on 9.5 Weeks movie. There's a whole video, which is all clips of the movie. Not everything is just Monty Python. Keep up the good work, Jennifer C.
So, first of all, it's the full Monty that we're talking about, not Monty Python. And second of all, I've never met a guy named Joseph whose nickname is Joss, but it's like damned if you do and damned if you don't, because we've gotten those reviews of, we sound too scripted. And so when we're just having conversations, it's when we don't research it. I mean, guys, whenever we have a thought, like we don't just go and research everything we hear. So I'm Team Gene on this one.
We couldn't have predicted that we were going to talk about Joseph A. Banks. What adult wakes up and says, I'm going to think about Joss A. Banks tonight?
Yeah.
Couple things here. So one is, if you go to the website, it's jossbank.com. If you look at the brand, it's Joss A. Bank. Yes, it is short for Joseph, but like Carl's Jr. isn't like Carlos's Juniors, it's Carlitos Jr. But also know that it is always a decision, in all seriousness, Jennifer, of when we're doing the edit of like, what do we leave in and what do we cut out? Because we could have a completely clean, factual pod where we would just, our natural instinct is to clip that part out. But sometimes it's so funny that like the pod would be dry without it. And that's why we leave it in. And, I was actually having a conversation the other day with our friend Drew Zachman, who does Songs Gone Wrong. And he was talking about how he had like 4 pages of notes for, his podcast he's doing, which is, I think runs about 20 minutes or something like that. And let me tell you, like we have copious notes. So we first do our first run of notes, and we do all of our research. Then we take the best of those notes and put them into another pile of notes that we all share. And then from there, we comment on each other's notes. And that's all before we go live. So if we're going to be talking about clothiers, then yes, we would look up the fact that in 1898, Charles Banks' grandson, Joseph A., was the inspiration for the name of this small tailor shop in Baltimore, Maryland. That is not what we did here.
But I think you're both missing the point. Okay, I want to thank Jennifer, because Jennifer's main point was to say Big D was correct. And thank you very much for that, Jennifer. Much appreciated.
Well, Big D, what movie do we have coming up next?
I got to tell you, I've said this many times before, where, this is a big moment in the podcast. This is a big movie. I don't know that it comes any bigger than this. Next week, we will be covering a movie which was commissioned by Adam R., And Adam and his brother have been one of our strongest benefactors throughout the years, and we truly appreciate them. And they decided to start off the new year with one of the best movies I can remember in my entire life. And it tells the tale of Clarice Starling, a top student at the FBI Training Academy. Jack Crawford wants Clarice to interview Dr. Hannibal Lecter, a brilliant psychiatrist who is also a violent psychopath serving life behind bars for various acts of murder and cannibalism. Crawford believes that Lecter may have insight into the case and that Starling, as an attractive young woman, may be just the bait to draw it out. Commissioned again by Adam R. It was released in 1991, directed by Jonathan Demme, and it is in the film series of Hannibal Lecter and has collected a gigantic stack of Academy Awards. This will be a good one.
I have a friend who I was hanging out with at a nightclub once, and Q Lazarus's Goodbye Horses came on, and he was like, oh, it's that song from Clerks 2. And I just about ate his face off in rage. I love this movie so much.
Me too.
So thank you, Adam. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, everyone who's commissioned Shat The Movies and made this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat The Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat The Movies. You can email us, hosts at shatthemovies.com, and support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. You can find all that information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, you can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, Game of Thrones, Watchmen, and coming up later this month, American Gods Season 3. You can find all that information on our website, shatontv.com, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review that helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, Ash Schlafly, and the King Bee, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
You spook easily, Starling?
Not yet, sir.
He's past the others. The last cell. I'll be watching. You'll do fine.
A killer is on the loose.
Keeps them alive for 3 days. Then he shoots them, skins them, and dumps them.
A rookie FBI agent is on his trail.
He's got real physical strength, cautious, precise, and he's never impulsive. He'll never stop.
But in order to track him down, she'll have to match wits.
I'll help you catch him, Clary.
Believe me, you don't want Hannibal Lecter inside your head.
With the darkest of all minds.
Just do your job, but never forget what he is.
Oh, he's a monster. Pure psychopath. So rare to capture one alive.
So close to the way you're going to catch him. Do you realize that? Oh, Clarice, your problem is you need to get more fun out of life.
You told me you don't spook easily.
You call this easy, sir?
Lecter's missing an arm.
Man's a raving maniac. Who knows what he'll do?